on to segment number 2, and we will continue in the NBA. As there was a rumor that swirled yesterday that had the Knicks and their interest in Cleveland Cavaliers point guard Colin Sexton. And Sexton is a guy who is very dynamic. He could score. He's a fun player to watch. But I think what a lot of people standing on him is that he's played in Cleveland. He's just not a guy that a lot of people have really seen and gotten a front view for in Cleveland. So when that name comes to mind, is that a possible target for the Knicks? Isaiah, as our guest, I'll throw it over to you to start this one off.
I mean, when I heard the rumor, I was interested to see what the Cavaliers were getting for Colin Sexton. So I had to do my research. And when they said Obi Toppin, Kevin Knox in a first-round pick, I said, do this trade right away. Like, do it yesterday. Do it last week. You know, this is something that you want. A 22-year-old scoring 24 points a game. Someone who's dynamic. Someone who could score off the dribble, attack your opponent. Doesn't it remind you of somebody that Tibbs used to coach early in his career? Yes, Derrick Rose. That's exactly the kind of guy you want on your team. Is he Derrick Rose? Of course not. He is not the Derrick Rose when he first came into the league. Derrick Rose is a once-in-a-lifetime player. You can't compare him to anybody, but you can compare Colin Sexton to how he plays. They have very comparable plays and play styles and how they attack opponents. Secondly, we can re-sign Derrick Rose without impacting cap space. We have his early bird rights. So essentially, we could sign him for $13.4 million multiple years, and it doesn't affect our cap space, which we could get more players. Colin Sexton's still on his rookie contract. You get him still on his rookie contract. You add Derrick Rose, who doesn't impact cap space. You still have room to get other players. I would rather have Colin Sexton than Lonzo Ball currently because we need scorers. Lonzo Ball he's a playmaker. We all know that he has great court vision. You know, he has great defense. But the scoring aspect is what the Knicks needed and what they missed during the playoffs, especially since we had Alfred Payton as our starter throughout most of the season. I personally think Colin Sexton is a bigger upgrade than Alfred Payton.
Yes, sir. I agree. I want to jump in here, Zach. I know you want to get in here. I want to jump in here real quickly, man. Listen, the Knicks, you make that move. You talking about Kevin Knox, who's barely in your rotation. Obi Toppin, who, you know, he's on the bench most of the time during the game or whatever. You include him for Colin Sexton and a pick. Colin Sexton is going to be worth more than those three guys anyway. You know, the two guys in the pick, more than likely. So, yeah, I'll make that move for sure because what the Knicks need right now is two things. A point guard, right? And I'm talking about the point guard position. They need more. But as far as the point guard position, they need a guy that is creator and offensive output. They need those two things in a point guard. And Colin Sexton gives you those two things. He can create his own shot. He can be a guy that gives you 20 points a game. He averaged 24 points per game last year, and he can create space for Julius Randle. Now, I know the knock on him is that he is a ball-dominant guy, and he is the definition of a ball-dominant guy. But at the end of the day, with experience, he can learn to trust his teammates. Who else we know was a ball-dominant guy on his team who turned into a playmaker last year? Julius Randle. So I do believe that Colin Sexton could be that next guy that takes the leap of getting other guys involved while still doing what he do, which is scoring the basketball. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Listen, I like Lonzo, but at the end of the day, we don't need Lonzo. We don't need a guy that's going to, just be this playmaker. Yes, we need a playmaker, but at the end of the day, we need scoring. We need guys that can get their own basket. Julius Randle was the go-to guy. He needs help. Colin Sexton is that guy. If you're the Knicks, you make that move without hesitation.
I think part of what makes this conversation so enjoyable to have as a Knicks fan is that we're talking about a first-round draft pick being involved in the trade, and it's not really the end-all be-all. It's not really the topic of conversation because the Knicks' expectations after the season they just had should be, okay, let's make the second round of the playoffs, let's make the conference finals, and we'll see what happens from there. That draft pick isn't really going to be that valuable anyway when it's in the late 20s. So I think it's very good to be able to use that pick as an expendable asset. I agree with you guys. I think Colin Sexton is that scoring guard that the Knicks might possibly just need. And I do like the Derrick Rose comparison. I've been watching Colin Sexton, obviously, since his college days at Alabama. And one thing I've really liked about him is that he's always had that attitude and that mindset of, I am the best player on the floor, and there is nothing you can do to stop me. And I think in a place like Cleveland, he's been able to show that, just not in front of that many people. The wins haven't really followed, but at the same time, Cleveland when they don't have LeBron James, when they've been a good team anyways. I think if you put him in a better situation, in a place to succeed like the Knicks, in a better environment, that could really work out. At the same time, we'll see what that report, if that report is true or not. I really like Obi Toppin as a player. I still think he could be very good in this league. But at the same time, no one's going to deny that his first year was disappointing. And at the same time, when you compare his age to some of the other players in that draft, he's older. It's maybe his ceiling is already reachable. Maybe he's already reached at least close to his ceiling. We'll see. So it really just depends how the Knicks really do feel about him. I do think that this is a trade that really would make the team better. We'll see what Cleveland really does want, and if that report is true. At the same time, if it doesn't work out, I still think Lonzo Ball could be a guy that we could go after, because kind of in a similar way to that asset, it could be as expendable as possible. I do think that Lonzo Ball could be a guy that if we pay the big bucks to, he can make a big difference as well.
I think that's another thing too with the Colin Sexton, if the trade was real or the rumor was real, is that we don't have to spend big money on a guard when we could spend money on other places that we could possibly get it, like a shooter. The Knicks are quote unquote rumored to be in on Duncan Robinson. And that's a big-time shooter. If you get a player like Duncan Robinson in a Garden, that's a big-time shooter. We could somehow re-sign Reggie Bullock to add on with Duncan Robinson. That's two big-time shooters on the floor that we didn't have last year. So it's just adding more scorers. Like, I love Lonzo. I think Lonzo will do great under Coach Tibbs. But I also think Colin Sexton will do better under Coach Tibbs. Yeah. So I can see different aspects of the game just changing with all the coaching staff that we have already and in place to kind of boost either the guards' gameplay. I think we're set for a great place if we get either guard on this team.
And another thing too, when you talk about defensively, I know Colin Sexton is not the best defender in the league, but he has that dog mentality on the defensive side of the ball, and that's what Coach Tibbs loves. So he's going to have you playing defense, and if you're a guy that wants to play defense, which I see in Colin Sexton, he will be able to do that and excel in a Coach Thibodeau coach team. You know what I'm saying? So also too, I want to say this. When you talk about how the Knicks over-exceeded expectations last year, they made the playoffs and they got bounced. This is the perfect opportunity for Leon Rose in that front office to capitalize and add to that roster going into next season. Listen, we don't have to chase the big superstar. We can still get some quality young players that have superstar potential or star potential in the future and build it that way and get some shooters and compete. We already made the playoffs last year. We can go even further if we do our job this offseason. Also, when you look at the Knicks here, they were ranked 30th in fast break points and 29th in transition efficiency last year, or frequency rather. Colin Sexton can fill that void right off the bat. That's why I think this makes a good fit for the New York Knicks. And if you're the New York Knicks, you got to make this move.
It's funny you said that, because I feel like Lonzo does the same thing as well, because he can outlet the ball. He's a great passer, and I love either player for the team. I just feel like Colin Sexton, we could save more salary cap and then bolster whatever we need outside the roster by getting Colin Sexton. Hey man, if you want both draft picks, take them. Take them. Take Frank, I don't give a dang, man. Just if we could get Sexton, I'm cool with that. I don't know what the Knicks' plans are for the 19th and 21st pick. I don't know if there's a player that they see that is bigger than Lonzo or Colin Sexton potentially get on his team. If you could trade these picks and get a player that impacts the team right away, I say do it.
And he's still young. Colin Sexton is still a young guy. So it's not like you're trying to trade for a veteran and giving up on a young player. He's a young player that's proven already. That's a proven commodity.
That could be a star.
That can be a star. So I think it makes sense for sure.
He's younger than Obi Toppin.
I think him and Kevin Knox the same age, no? No, it's Kevin Knox younger? This is crazy. I hope they get him.
They wanted to draft him too. They wanted to draft Colin Sexton if he fell to them, but he went off the board. He would have been a Knick over Colin Sexton over Kevin Knox had he fell in the draft. So at the end of the day, you didn't get him before, you can get him now.
It does feel great once again to have the Knicks in the conversation for these players that aren't in great situations, and to see players looking at a team like the New York Knicks and saying, okay, this is a place where I think my career could improve based on the improved situation. So I think that is a great situation to be in if you are the New York Knicks.
Go Knicks, baby. That's all I got to say.
We are the New York Knicks. We are the New York Knicks. We are the New York Knicks. We are the New York